and that this final rule, in fact, at the direction of the Biden administration, would eliminate private sales, right? It's not going to say you're not allowed to do private sales anymore, but the effect of the rule will be that elimination.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about some rumors going around about the ATF and a proposed ban on private sale of firearms. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about how they will bring about this proposed ban and what's new, because there's been some new developments in this area that you need to know about. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And if you're one of the big chunk of our audience that isn't subscribed, consider subscribing if you enjoy this discussion. But let's start things off first here with some Twitter speculation.
Wild speculation, but I
Yeah.
love it. Let's do it.
Breaking bad news, gun owners. You're not going to like hearing this one. The ATF is at it again. A whistleblower just came out from the ATF and announced that at the direction of the White House, of the Biden criminal administration, the ATF has drafted a 1,300-page document, proposed rule change, wherein they essentially outlaw the private sale of firearms. Folks, I got to tell you, outlawing the private sale of firearms means that they want to track, trace, and register every single gun and gun owner like they're a sex offender through the federal NICS system, which has never stopped a single mass killing, folks. I've got one piece of advice for you. Buy guns, buy them by the boatload, and never give them up.
That is a lot of pages.
That is a lot of pages. So if you are the casual observer to gun law, you might see these things, and he's not the only one. They're flying around and say, oh my God, what is happening? What fresh hell is the ATF raining down upon us? And the answer is, the hell is actually not so fresh.
No,
right?
no.
This is
hell repackaged as fresh.
Yes, but we've been following this since the beginning of September, at the very least. And actually, if you go back to the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, before that.
In order to understand this, you have to have a little bit of background about the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act.
What happened in the wake of the Uvalde shooting, which, of course, anytime there are, young lives lost in that kind of tragedy, there are calls to do something. And although most often in this country, I would say those calls go generally unheeded because more laws don't stop criminals from doing horrible things.
You're kidding me.
I know. That wild statement. In this instance, it did. We passed the biggest piece of gun legislation in this country that has passed since the 2004 assault weapons ban.
Yeah.
So it really was a big deal, and it unfortunately gave us this sneaky little provision in which, in the United States Code, we redefined who was engaged in the business of buying and selling firearms, such that you need a federal firearms license in order to do so, right? So we've got sales from licensed dealers. That's your business. You've got to go through the background check process, 4473s, maintain records, give the ATF all this access, so on and so on and so on and so on. Or in how many states, Richard?
29.
In 29 states, you can alternatively not be a gun dealer, but yet engage in private sales of firearms, so long as, and this is before the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, so long as it was not your predominant goal to earn profit and for it to be your livelihood. That's a summation. That's not the exact words that we had. But what did the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act do?
They got rid of the livelihood component, which is a big deal because, folks get a good deal on a gun, turn around, sell the gun. Maybe they make a few bucks. Maybe they got some beer money, some walking around cash, but they're not making their livelihood off of it. And so by removing that, we start bringing in a whole lot more transactions into the purview of what might otherwise require a license.
Exactly. So Bipartisan Safer Communities Act does a lot of things, but in part, and what's important today is takes that word livelihood out of the United States Code. So then what happens back in September?
So we get a new proposed rule from the ATF because we have, the United States Code. That's our law on the books.
Mm-hmm.
Our Code of Federal Regulation, in most instances, mirror the United States Code, but generally they just kind of flesh out some of the code in more detail for the administration of the law, theoretically. Now, yeah, the ATF, for a long time, they mirrored the United States Code. Not a big deal. Congress passed a law. They passed an identical regulation in the Code of Federal Regulation. Everybody was all happy. in recent years, the ATF has gone completely rogue and is basically trying to pass their own laws.
Yes.
They've brought the United States Code and the Code of Federal Regulations out of sync with each other, and they're using that as a backdoor to regulate firearms, the Second Amendment, in attempt because they say, "Oh, Congress, they have this do nothing itis."
I love the do nothingness, though.
Mm.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, stagnation keeps us safe
Oh, yeah,
from our lawmakers, generally speaking.
yeah.
But so the ATF, yes, would love to stop that stagnation. And so back in the beginning of September, they dropped the proposed rule, which would change the Code of Federal Regulations, also remove that word livelihood, and give us lots of ways in which they could define who was, in fact, engaged in the business of dealing. And it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, it moved most gun sales, private transfers into what would require
Yes.
theoretically a federal firearms license, and we have an entire video breaking down that rule.
We do. But I mean, I think just big points, right? We speculated in actually several videos we did on this. We speculated that potentially anyone could be a dealer even for selling a single firearm because number one, if you kept track of your profit and losses, even on one occasion potentially, even though there was an opt-out that was like, well, if you only do it occasionally, it's not a big deal, you're not a dealer, but then nothing else in the rule actually backed that up.
Right.
But if you kept track of your profit and losses, let's say by drafting a bill of sale, you could potentially be an unlawful dealer from that one sale. Or even if you didn't make a profit, right? I mean, they talked about things like if you bartered the gun or if you just wanted to make a profit and didn't actually make a profit,
Right.
you could still be in violation of this law. So we speculated at that point that essentially anyone could be a dealer. There would be no more private sales, and we would have this sort of hellish world in which the ATF, in its rulemaking authority, has like gutted our ability as Americans to engage in free commerce, which is insane.
Yes. That brings us, yeah, and then I
Brings
mean
us to what's happening
yeah,
right
that brings
now.
us to today. So let's
Yeah.
talk about the rumor going around on Twitter, and we've received bits and pieces. There's shockingly little online about this,
Mhm.
but we've received some information that leads us to believe, hey, this is credible. That even though they made that wild hellscape that Emily talked about, making virtually everything a banned private transfer of a firearm, there's some happenings that make it sound like they were making it even more expansive than the proposed rule that we've already received.
Yes. So what the internet is speculating at this point is that there is in fact a leak from the ATF that says yes, we are we're getting this final rule ready. Remember, once the final rule is published, it goes into effect 90 days generally.
Generally,
Generally 90 days after publication, and that this final rule, in fact, at the direction of the Biden administration, would eliminate private sales, right? It's not going to say you're not allowed to do private sales anymore, but the effect of the rule will be that elimination. So, I mean, we don't have any reason to.
yeah. Well, I think one thing worth addressing that was in the video that we played at the beginning was 1,300-page rule. Yeah, not likely.
No,
Uh,
I mean, but uh, they are going to address a lot of comments,
Right.
right? It could potentially be very, very, very long, but it's not going to be the rule that's that long.
No, so this rule that we have now, the proposed rule, 108 pages. When everything's all said and done, I'd be surprised if the rule itself was more than 150 pages.
Mhm.
All that extra thousand, several hundred, tens of hundreds of pages, those are all going to be responses to comments. But if the ATF were to have a 108-page rule and then have a 1,300-page rule, I mean, that would violate the Administrative Procedures Act. So I imagine they're not going to do that.
I don't think it's that. The proposed rule was so bad that if the final rule looks like the proposed rule, yes, I do think it will have the effect of eliminating private sales. And I do not think they would have violated the Administrative Procedures Act. And then I think we're in sort of a world of hurt because we have a rule that has gone into effect that has to be challenged on Second Amendment grounds. And I don't have now here I am speculating wildly on nothing but the internet information from people's Twitters and TikToks, but I don't have any reason to disbelieve these rumors.
No.
In fact, it although possible, right? We have seen ATF publishes a rule, everyone freaks out. ATF says, Oops, right? Think green tip ammo from the Obama
Yeah,
administration,
think pistol brace version 1.0.
right? But that is rare. That is the exception. That is not what generally happens. And so I don't have any reason to think like that guy whose video we watched, I don't have any reason to think he's wrong.
No, and to that kind of second question, how would they bring about, because essentially they're talking about a ban on the private sale of
Mhm.
firearms. Like Emily said, it's not going to be a private sales of firearms are banned. It's going to be everything you do is considered engaging in the business. Therefore, you
Mhm.
need a federal firearms license. Boom. That's
Yeah.
how they're going to do it.
Yeah, therefore, when I sell my gun to Richard, they're gonna come after me for being an unlawful dealer. Like, there's
Yeah.
not gonna be a law out there that says you can't engage in private sales anymore, but it's gonna be if you do it, we're gonna say, "No, no, no, that wasn't a private sale. You're a dealer. You're a
Right.
dealer. You're a dealer. You're a
Yeah.
dealer."
Oprah.
Oprah gun dealers.
So that's how they're going to bring it about theoretically. They're going to switch out what we have for the proposed rule for even more expansive final
Right.
rule. And I don't think it takes a whole lot to do that. And so
It was bad. It was bad to begin
yeah,
with.
it was bad to begin with. So the next step is, what's new here? Essentially, it's the leakers.
It's the leakers, right? And it's that it is coming. It is imminent.
Yeah.
Right? It can take, as we saw, recently, gosh, it was pistol braces, took forever, between the proposed rule and the final rule, but this is not taking so long. If there are leakers and if it is at this point in the process, it is coming. It
Yeah.
is coming soon. What? I mean, by the summer, probably. That's my wild speculation. I have no
Right.
reason to think that except for just experience watching these things, but I would think by the summer.
And the only other thing that I'd say is new is, um, unlike the final rule on pistol braces, which is, probably going to be overturned on a violation of the Administrative
Mhm.
Procedures Act, this one brings about a new challenge with constitutional challenges is the sale of firearms implicated under New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin? Is that touched by the Second Amendment? I think we have some courts who say yes,
Mhm.
sale and transfer of firearms is integral to the right to keep and bear arms, and therefore it should be protected under that standard. The challenge to this is going to look very different.
It is, and if you are pro 2A and if you are trying to dismantle this rule, yes, your argument is this is a violation of Bruin. If you are the government and you want to abuse everyone's rights, your argument is no, 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 no. This has nothing to do with the wear and carry of arms,
Yep.
right? We're talking about commerce. Bruin doesn't affect a rule on commerce,
Mm.
right? It's not a great argument, but that's the argument they have, and
Yeah.
it's the argument they will make,
It just
right?
hurts. It hurts my heart a little bit because
Mhm.
when I hear government commerce, the Supreme Court usually says government wins.
Yeah, I know.
So I don't really like that very much.
I didn't make the rules.
All right, we're gonna have 2 videos up here. So because that's not the end of the story. If you want a complete breakdown of this rule and what you can expect, check out that video here. But if you're wondering, hey, do I fall into one of these 29 states that still have private sales? Will I be affected? We'll have that one on this side of the screen. But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And please question and comment for us below. And until next time, we're the Armed Surgeons.